Hello there everyone, Ashnflash here, and welcome on into a long overdue video. This has been something that I've just kind of been pushing back and just trying to mull over in my mind, and I guess calm down, honestly, because it's a little frustrating to hear someone from LEGO make certain statements about a theme that I personally really love and care about, and if it wasn't for it, like, this channel wouldn't exist, and all these other things. So, today we're going to be talking about the statement from the Daily Bugle designer, and he's on the superhero team, Mark Stafford, and he actually made a comment about the lack of DC sets, and the thinking behind it, or at least the reasoning here, is fundamentally flawed. And I think that also it's just frustrating that this is the statement that we're getting. And I know that he doesn't necessarily speak on behalf of LEGO or the superheroes team in general, but this is the only statement that we have to go off of, and it's flawed down to its core. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about this and just talk about some of the things that they could have done this year, and why, if this statement is actually true, that in 2022 they will have no excuses for what is to come. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and let's just dive into his statement. So this was from an interview here from Brick Fanatics, and they had the chance to talk to him, and they asked him about the lack of DC sets, and specifically about with Batman. And he said, "Look at the movies coming out. We've got 4 Marvel movies and 1 DC movie. So it's probably skewing what we're doing at the moment. There's lots of things we'd love to do, but there are 4 Marvel movies and 1 DC." Then he goes on to say, "A 7-year-old knows what's happened in the last 3 years, maximum. So it's very difficult to bring it into their conscious mind." So there's a lot to unpack there. Let's go through the 4 movies for Marvel this year. We've got Black Widow, then we have Shang-Chi, as well as the Eternals, and then Spider-Man No Way Home. So of course they're going to do sets. And specifically though, sometimes they do skip out on some movies, but sure, you did the 4. And 1 DC movie this year. And technically there was supposed to be 2. There are the Batman sets that have been pushed next year. I get all that. And the Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad comes out this week, which is why we're doing this video, because I get why, of course, they wouldn't do sets off of the Suicide Squad, off of the movie, branding it under the Suicide Squad, all that stuff. But to go back and look at what they've done in the past with these indirect tie-ins, they did a whole Suicide Squad wave, but just branded it under Batman, but had all these characters from the movie in those. So that was remarkable, and they've done that a couple of other times for superheroes, and I think that looking back at those and the indirect tie-ins, even with Marvel, with X-Men, it's just confusing to me why there's nothing here. I think that specifically like King Shark, or even just putting Harley in a set this year, would have been phenomenal to get. So looking at it that way, again, do your indirect tie-in like Shazam. They didn't want to, and I can't specifically remember the quote or the reasoning, but they didn't want to take the risk on Shazam, which is why we didn't get a movie set. So to do the indirect tie-ins that they did with Shazam, and then nothing for Suicide at all. Nothing at all. I get on doing Bloodsport, like the name and all these different things, but like Harley or Polka Dot Man, King Shark has been something that people have been wanting for so long. It's just crazy that they didn't do anything. Well, we'll excuse that, right? They don't want to be tied to the Suicide Squad. I understand that. But let's move on to his next statement there and unpack that a bit. A 7-year-old knows what's happened in the last 3 years. Well, let's take a look at specifically the theme for DC this year. What are the sets that we're getting? 1966 Adam West TV show sets, and then on top of that, we're getting 2 sets presumably rumored to be tied to the Dark Knight trilogy. Last I checked, that wasn't 3 years ago. 1966. Are you kidding me? Like, I can't connect these 2 things. It doesn't make sense. Let's look at Marvel. What have they done? They introduced a whole new theme this year under the Infinity Saga, going back to old movies and creating sets off of them, filling in the missing pieces that we didn't get back then. And again, yeah, sure, most of them are off of Endgame, and some people want to say that they're from Infinity War or whatever, but you've got a set from the very first MCU movie, Iron Man, 2008, 13 years ago. An additional 10 years over the 3-year gap that children's minds or whatever this reasoning is. So, really don't like that. And specifically, at least even with that, they got comic book sets. They got those sets in January, and even in March with Spider-Man, they got these indirect tie-ins. Even they got a D2C with the Bugle. They did an advent calendar as well. They're not about the movies from the last 3 years that are relevant in children's minds. You've also just coming up with ideas and concepts. Do that. You can do that with DC. It doesn't have to be a movie tie-in. That's not what Marvel is either. It is so much more than just the MCU movies at this point. So I really just cannot agree with this statement. I think it's important, before we take a look at what is to come for 2022 and what we can maybe expect, that we take a look back at the last 4 years that I've done some research and just comparing the amount of sets and the amount of characters that come in sets, because for me personally, it's important that they continue to push the universe and the portfolio, and they continue to grow it where we get new characters. And that, even if it's just Bronze Tiger, a character nobody is asking for, at least it's someone new. So you'll see as we go through here why that's important. So for 2018, there was actually 13 DC sets and 15 Marvel sets, and a total of 12 characters introduced for both themes. Now, there was also the Lego Batman movie that year as well, which got a few more sets and characters. But moving on over now to 2019, there was a total of 11 sets for DC and 19 for Marvel. Characters introduced, we got 4 new characters for DC and 7 for Marvel. And then for 2020, which was actually the 80th anniversary for Batman, we got 5 sets for DC to 20 for Marvel, as well as 3 new characters introduced in the sets for DC and 5 for Marvel. It's also important to note that it was the year of the DC minifigure series, which brought us 8 new characters. And this year for 2021, there was a total of 7 DC sets, still some to come out, as well as 34 Marvel sets. And for DC, it introduced a total of 0 new characters, and Marvel saw 33 new characters in the sets and 4 new characters from the CMF series. So I got these numbers from looking at the list on Brickset, and if you look at the totals, they're off because there's like those little baggies, the little bags that have the different characters sold in Europe or whatever it is, like individual characters, as well as I didn't count Comic-Con sets either because that isn't available everywhere, so it was just poly bags and different promos that were available worldwide. So looking at that, you could see the steady decline in DC sets and DC characters and the huge uptick and rise in Marvel. And I understand, I'm not trying to start a debate here between Marvel versus DC, which is better. We all have our own personal preferences and what we're drawn to, or maybe you like everything equally. But my point is, you could see how things were really balanced there in 2018, and then it started to tilt up. So that's really crazy to me to think this year we got nothing. And they're saying we're only going to be doing things that are in kids' current mindset and all these things. You're going back to 1966 before their parents were even born. So what are you saying right now? And to think as well to 2022, this is where I have to call them out on it. And this is a challenge. In 2022, we are getting amazing movies, and we either need direct tie-ins or indirect tie-ins. We've got the Batman movie coming out first. Of course, we know those sets, they're probably going to launch in January, most likely, because the movie's launching in March if it doesn't get delayed again. We're also going to be getting The Flash, which, if they don't do sets on, I think they're crazy with Michael Keaton 89 fans, as well as Ben Affleck fans, putting them in sets. And then we've also got Black Adam, which, depending on how dark it is, who knows, but I'd love to get some of the characters in that movie, as well as in December, Aquaman 2, which was a huge success with the first one, so I'd be shocked if they don't do more sets. And then, of course, in 2023, we'll get Shazam 2 sets. Hopefully, they learn their lesson from skipping out on it the first time. And I guess the point of this is just to clear up and inform you guys of, I guess, Lego's thinking, or at least what they're saying, and this isn't anything against Mark Stafford. I have the utmost respect for everything that he's done for Lego. I love the Bugle. He's designed a ton of amazing sets as well in the past. He designed a lot of the Eternals ones as well, which look fantastic coming out in October. And specifically, though, I feel hurt, honestly, by this response, by the treatment that we got this year for DC, and I think that it's really ironic to see the Star Wars community, or at least the vocal one online, and just see how angry they get when they don't get their way, or when Lego doesn't do something that they want, or even if they do something that they want, it's still not enough for them. I think that it's really crazy that after the abuse that that team has gotten from online, what has the DC community done to really deserve any of this, to get this sort of a response and an answer? I just think that it's really crazy in comparison, to compare the two and to see how much love Star Wars gets, but to them, the best isn't good enough of what we're getting here for Star Wars. This wave is perfect for the summer, honestly. So anyways, that's a whole other topic of discussion, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think of this response from Lego? What do you think is happening with DC? I think that next year, with the 10-year anniversary of the theme, as well as just all these movies, they can't miss out. And if they do, then I don't really know what the reasoning is at that point. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video nonetheless, and I hope you all have a great day. I will see you all in the next one.